The palace of Zarkin Prime was built from black crystal and cold metal. Its long halls were filled with shining lights, but there was no warmth in them. Every step echoed like a warning. This was not a place for mistakes, and it was never a place for humans. At the far end of the eastern hall, a young human maid named Lyra knelt on the floor. She wiped the crystal tiles again and again, even though they were already clean. Her hands trembled slightly, but she kept working. Humans did not complain here. Complaints led to punishment, sometimes worse. Lyra was small compared to the aliens around her. Her clothes were plain gray, showing her low rank. She had lived in the palace since she was a child, brought here after a border war the humans had lost long ago. To the palace, she was invisible, just another servant, just another human. But today felt different. The air was heavy. Guards lined the walls, holding energy spears. Noble aliens whispered to each other, their eyes full of fear. At the center of the hall stood a massive creature, chained with glowing metal restraints. The dragon. Its name was Astrax, the royal dragon of the alien prince. Its scales shimmered like dark fire. Smoke slowly escaped from its nostrils with every breath. Its golden eyes moved carefully, watching everything. Everyone knew the stories. Astrax had burned entire cities. Astrax had killed warriors with a single strike. Astrax had never shown mercy. And now, Lyra was cleaning the floor only a few steps away from it. She tried not to look at the dragon. Humans were taught from birth not to meet a dragon's eyes. It was said that doing so invited death. Still, Lyra could feel Astrax's gaze on her. Heavy, curious, dangerous. Move faster, human, one of the guards snapped. Yes, Lyra said softly. Her voice was calm, but her heart was racing. She shifted closer to the dragon without realizing it, focused only on finishing her task. The chains around Astrax rattled suddenly. The sound made the entire hall tense. The alien prince stood near the throne, tall and proud, his armor shining. He raised one hand slightly, signaling the guards to stay calm. Astrax had been restless all day. No one knew why. Lyra stood up, holding her cleaning cloth. She took one small step back. That was when it happened. With terrifying speed, Astrax moved. The chain strained as the dragon lunged forward. Its massive head came down, jaws opening wide. The guards shouted. Nobles screamed. The prince turned sharply. Too late. Crack. Astrax's teeth closed around Lyra's hand. Pain exploded through her arm. The cloth fell to the floor. Blood dripped onto the crystal tiles. Lyra gasped but did not scream. She dropped to her knees, shock freezing her body. The palace went silent. Everyone knew what this meant. The venom of a royal dragon was deadly. No human had ever survived it. Death usually came in seconds, painful and final. The guards raised their weapons. Some turned away, unable to watch. The alien prince's face went pale. Impossible, he whispered. Lyra's breathing was fast. Her vision blurred. She waited for the pain to grow worse. She waited to die, but it didn't happen. Seconds passed. Then more. The venom burned inside her, but instead of destroying her, something strange happened. Warmth spread through her veins. The pain slowly faded, replaced by a deep, steady feeling, like strength waking up. Astrax released her hand. Instead of roaring or attacking again, the dragon stepped back. Then, to everyone's shock, Astrax lowered its massive head. It bowed. A low, deep sound escaped its throat. Not a roar, but something softer, almost respectful. The guards froze. The nobles stopped breathing. The prince stared in disbelief. This had never happened before. Lyra looked up slowly. Her hand was wounded, but it was no longer bleeding heavily. Strange faint symbols glowed briefly on her skin, then disappeared. She felt weak but alive. Very alive. She met the dragon's eyes by accident. Astrax did not attack. Instead, its golden eyes were calm. The alien prince took one slow step forward. His voice shook as he spoke. A human bitten by a royal dragon and still standing? No one answered him, because no one had an answer. The palace that once looked down on humans now stood in silence, frozen by a single truth. Something had gone terribly wrong. Or terribly right. And this was only the beginning. The palace did not move. No orders were given. No weapons fired. No one breathed easily. Lyra still knelt on the crystal floor where the dragon had bitten her. Blood stained the black tiles, yet the blood did not spread like it should. It shimmered faintly, as if the floor itself was afraid to touch it. The royal guards waited for command to end her life, or to watch it end on its own. But nothing happened. Seconds turned into long, heavy moments. A human bitten by Astrax should have been screaming by now. Poison from a royal dragon attacked the heart first, then the lungs. Death followed fast and cruel. Every noble in the hall knew this. Every guard had seen it before. Yet Lyra was still alive. Her breathing slowed. The pain in her arm faded into a strange warmth. It was not gentle. It was powerful, like fire wrapped in calm. The alien prince broke the silence. "Bring the healers," he ordered quietly. 2 royal medics stepped forward, their hands shaking. They did not want to touch a human marked by dragon venom. Still, they knelt beside Lyra and activated their scanners. Lights flickered across her body. The screens went dark. The medics stared. "That's not possible," one whispered. "What do you see?" the prince demanded. The medic swallowed. "Her blood, it is changing. The venom is not killing her. It is merging." A low murmur spread through the nobles. Some stepped back as if Lyra carried a curse. The prince looked at Astrax. "Why?" he asked the dragon. Astrax did not answer with fire or rage. The dragon sat, not chained, not controlled, waiting. Lyra slowly pushed herself to her feet. One guard lifted his weapon, but the prince raised his hand sharply. "Do not touch her." Lyra swayed. The world felt different now. Sound was sharper, colors brighter. She could hear the slow, deep breathing of Astrax behind her. She could feel his presence, strong and ancient, like a mountain watching over her. She had cleaned these halls for years. She had bowed her head for years. She had survived by being invisible. Now, every eye was on her. Human. A noble hiss. "Get back on the floor." Before Lyra could react, Astrax growled. The sound shook the walls. The noble fell silent. Fear filled the hall again, but this time it was not fear of the dragon alone. It was fear of a human beside it. The prince stepped closer, studying Lyra carefully. "What is your name?" he asked. She hesitated. Humans were not usually asked their names by royalty. "Lyra," she said quietly. The prince nodded. "Lyra, you should be dead." She looked at her wounded hand. The bite marks were already closing. Faint lines of light pulsed under her skin, then vanished. "I know," she replied. The prince turned to the elders who had just entered the hall. Their long robes dragged across the floor as they moved quickly, their faces pale. "The dragon has chosen," one elder said in a low voice. "That is impossible," another snapped. "Astrax only bonds with royal blood." "Then explain this," the first elder replied, pointing at Lyra. Astrax lowered its head again, closer to her this time. The dragon's massive form shielded her from the guards without being told. A bond. Old. Rare. Dangerous. The elders exchanged nervous looks. One of them whispered words from an ancient language. The palace lights flickered. "This has happened before," the elder said. "Long ago. Before the palace. Before the empire." The prince's eyes narrowed. "With humans?" The elder nodded slowly. "When humans were not servants, but warriors." Silence struck harder than any roar. "Humans, warriors?" The nobles laughed nervously. "Lies," one said. "Humans are weak." Astrax slammed his tail into the floor. The crystal cracked. No one laughed again. The prince raised his voice. "What happens now?" The elder looked at Lyra with something close to fear. "Now," the palace must decide. Lyra felt a pull in her chest, strong and steady. She did not understand it, but she trusted it. Her fear faded, not because she felt safe, but because she felt ready. She took one small step forward. The guards tensed. Astrax stepped with her. Together, the prince's breath caught. In that moment, he understood one terrible truth. This human was no longer a servant. She was no longer powerless. And if the palace chose wrong, it would burn. The silence returned, thicker than before, because the human who should not exist had just changed everything. The palace archives had not been opened in centuries. They were hidden far beneath the throne, behind doors sealed with ancient codes and forgotten warnings. No servants were allowed here. No humans had ever stepped inside. Until now, Lyra walked to the dark hall, guarded by soldiers on every side. The crystal floor felt colder than usual, but she did not slow her steps. Astrax followed behind her, his massive form squeezing through the ancient passage. The chains that once held him were gone. That alone terrified the palace. The alien prince walked ahead, his face tight with worry. Every step echoed like a countdown. Above them, the palace continued its life, unaware that history was about to wake up. The eldest archivist stopped before a massive stone door marked with faded symbols. "These marks," he said, pointing, "are older than our empire." The prince frowned. "They look human." The archivist nodded. "They are." The door opened with a deep grinding sound. Dust filled the air as lights flickered on, revealing walls covered in images. Humans standing beside dragons, not below them. Lyra stopped breathing. Humans in armor. Humans riding dragons. Humans giving orders. "This is not possible," one guard whispered. The archivist's voice shook. "This is a truth." The prince turned to Lyra slowly. "Your blood woke these doors." As if answering him, Lyra felt heat spread through her veins again. Her wound burned softly. Faint symbols glowed on her arm, brighter than before. Astrax lowered his head and touched the markings gently with his snout. A memory surged through the room. The walls changed. The images moved. They showed a past soaked in fire and war. Humans and dragons fought together against an enemy that did not fear flame. The humans did not rule the dragons. They stood beside them. Then came betrayal. Alien kings feared human influence. They broke the bonds. Dragons were chained. Humans were enslaved. The vision ended. Silence fell heavy. "So we erased them," the prince whispered. "Yes," the archivist said, "and we erased the truth with them." Astrax roared, not in rage, but in grief. The sound echoed through the chamber, shaking dust from the ceiling. Lyra dropped to one knee, overwhelmed by the memories she had never lived but somehow understood. "You carry the old blood," the archivist said. "Rare, nearly gone." The prince clenched his fists. "What does that make her?" The archivist looked at Astrax, then at Lyra. "A key," he said. The palace alarm suddenly screamed. Red lights flashed across the chamber. A guard rushed in. "My prince, the council has moved. They are calling this an abomination. They want the human executed before nightfall." The prince turned pale. "They fear what they cannot control," the archivist said. Astrax growled, flames flickering between his teeth. Lyra stood slowly. Fear tried to return, but the fire inside her pushed it away. "They will kill me," she said. "No," the prince replied firmly. "Not without burning the palace." The guard hesitated. "My prince, the council controls the fleets." The prince looked at Astrax, at the moving walls, at the truth he could no longer deny. "Then let them come." Suddenly, the ground shook. A deep explosion rocked the chamber. The lights went out. In the darkness, Astrax moved instantly, placing himself between Lyra and the entrance. Armed soldiers rushed in, weapons charged. "For the Empire!" someone shouted. Before anyone could fire, Lyra felt something snap into place inside her. Time slowed. She raised her hand. The symbols flared bright gold. Astrax roared and stopped. The fire froze in his throat, bending toward her instead of outward. The soldiers froze. The prince stared in horror and awe. "She's controlling him," he whispered. "No," the archivist corrected softly. "She's listening." Lyra lowered her hand. The fire faded. The soldiers backed away, fear breaking their formation. One truth spread faster than any order. The old bond was not broken. It had only been sleeping, and now it was awake. Above them, the palace began to panic, because a secret buried in blood had returned, and it remembered everything. The throne hall of Zarkin Prime had never been so full and never so afraid. Nobles crowded the upper balconies, whispering like nervous insects. Soldiers formed tight lines along the walls, weapons glowing and ready. At the center of it all stood the throne, tall and sharp, carved from black crystal. Before it stood Lyra, a human, unchained, unbowed. That alone felt like a crime. Behind her, Astrax lay coiled, his massive body blocking the main entrance. His wings were half spread, a silent warning. The heat from his scales made the air shimmer. One wrong move, and the palace would burn. The alien prince sat on the throne, his hands gripping the armrests tightly. He looked calm, but inside his mind, war raged. He had called his judgment, knowing there would be no safe ending. The High Council stepped forward. By ancient law, the lead counselor declared, this human is guilty of forbidden bonding, corruption of royal dragon, and threat to imperial order. The words echoed through the hall. Lyra kept her eyes forward. Her heart beat hard, but her fear did not control her anymore. The fire inside her answered instead, steady, watchful. Humans are servants. Another counselor added coldly, tools, not equals. Astrax's tail slammed once against the floor. The sound silenced the hall. The prince raised his hand slowly. This judgment will proceed without violence. The counselor sneered. Can you promise that, my prince? Before he could answer, the ancient archivist stepped forward, carrying a glowing crystal tablet. You judge without truth, the archivist said. This human did not steal the bond. The dragon chose her. The nobles erupted in shouting. Lies! Manipulation! Kill the human! The prince slammed his fist against the throne. Enough! The hall froze. He stood. If Astrax chose her, then the law must answer why. The archivist activated the tablet. Light burst into the air, forming images, humans and dragons standing together in ancient times. Gasps echoed through the hall. This bond predates the Empire, the archivist said. It was not forbidden. It was erased. The counselor's eyes darkened. Then it should stay erased. Lyra finally spoke. Her voice was calm, but it carried across the hall. I did not ask for this. Every eye turned to her. I was a maid. I cleaned your floors. I lowered my head. I survived because I was quiet. She raised her wounded hand. The dragon bit me. I should be dead. A pause. But I'm not. The silence that followed was heavy. Because humans were never weak, she continued. You made us that way. The council roared in anger. Enough! The lead counselor shouted. This is sedition. Guards. Before the order finished, Astrax stood. The dragon rose to his full height, wings spreading wide. Fire rolled through the hall, without burning anything. The heat bent the air. The guards froze. Astrax lowered his head, not to the throne, but to Lyra. Gasps filled the hall. The prince's breath caught. The dragon submits to a human, someone whispered. The counselor stumbled back. Impossible. The prince stepped down from the throne. He walked until he stood beside Lyra. If the dragon is chosen, he said, then this judgment is not yours alone. He turned to the council. You fear humans because you fear losing control. The counselor hissed. You would risk the empire for a servant? The prince looked at Lyra. At Astrax. Then he answered, I would risk it for the truth. The council signaled the soldiers secretly. Weapons charged. Lyra felt it before anyone moved. The fire inside her flared. Stop, she said softly. Astrax roared. The floor cracked. Columns shattered. The soldiers dropped their weapons, hands covering their ears. The council screamed. The prince stared in shock. Lyra did not shout. She did not threaten. She simply stood. This palace was built on lies, she said. I will not bow to them. The council retreated. The nobles fell silent. The prince raised his voice. By my authority, this human is placed under royal dragon protection. The hall exploded with noise. No, you can't. This is madness. The prince did not sit back down. Anyone who touches her, he continued, answers to Astrax. The dragon's eyes burned bright. The council had lost, not by force, but by fear. As the hall slowly emptied, Lyra remained standing before the throne. She was no longer a maid. She was no longer invisible. And the palace understood one terrifying truth. Judgment had been passed, and it was not in their favor. The palace changed after the judgment, not in its walls, not in its towers, but in its fear. Whispers followed Lyra wherever she walked. Doors closed softly when she passed. Guards no longer shouted at her, yet they kept their hands close to their weapons. To them, she was no longer a servant. She was a question, a danger, and sometimes, late at night, a nightmare. Lyra trained in the lower arenas, far from noble eyes. The prince had ordered it done in secret. If the council was forced to accept her protection, they did not have to accept her strength. Astrax waited for her every day. Not chained, not commanded, waiting. The first time she stepped into the arena alone, her legs shook. The space was wide and open, the air heavy with heat. Burn marks covered the stone walls, memories of battles long past. "You don't have to do this," the prince said from the edge of the arena. Lyra nodded. "I know." But she walked forward anyway. Astrax lifted his massive head. His golden eyes locked onto her. Power rolled off him like heat from a sun. One mistake here, and she would be ash. Lyra closed her eyes. She reached inward. The fire answered. Her heartbeat slowed. The noise of the palace faded. She felt Astrax, not his body, but his will. Ancient, proud, tired. "I'm not here to control you," she whispered. Astrax lowered his head slightly. That was the first lesson. Days passed, then weeks. Lyra learned to listen instead of speak, to feel instead of command. When Astrax moved, she moved. When he rested, she stayed still. The fire inside her grew stronger, but it never burned out of control. The prince watched carefully. "This bond," he said to the archivist one evening, "it's changing them both." The archivist nodded. That is how it always was. But not everyone watched in silence. Deep within the council chambers, shadows gathered. "She is becoming too strong," one counselor hissed. "She is human," another spat, "and humans should kneel." A plan was formed, a violent one. The night the attack came, the palace slept. Lyra woke suddenly. The fire inside her screamed. She sat up, heart pounding. Astrax roared from below. Not rage. Warning. Lyra ran. The arena gates were open when they should not have been. Smoke filled the air. Soldiers rushed in from every side, wearing council markings. "Kill the human," someone shouted. Energy blasts lit the darkness. Astrax rose, flames bursting from his jaws. "No!" Lyra screamed. She stepped forward without thinking. The fire answered. Her skin glowed. Astrax's flames curved around her, not burning her, but shielding her. The soldiers stopped, frozen in terror. "What is she?" one whispered. Lyra raised her hand. The ground shook. The fire did not destroy. It commanded. The soldiers dropped their weapons, falling to their knees as fear crushed them. The prince arrived moments later, sword drawn. "Stand down," he roared. The council's forces fled. Silence returned, broken only by the crackle of fading fire. Lyra collapsed. Astrax caught her. Gently. The prince stared, his breath unsteady. "They tried to kill you," he said. "They were afraid," Lyra replied weakly. "So am I," the prince admitted. That night, the truth became clear. The council would not stop. The bond was growing too strong. And the empire was not ready for a human who could stand in dragon fire and remain unburned. As Astrax curled protectively around her, Lyra looked up at the dark ceiling. She had survived by being small. Now she would survive by being dangerous. And the fire between them was only getting stronger. The warning came too late. Lyra was standing on a high balcony when she felt it. The fire inside her twisted sharply, no longer calm, no longer patient. This was not danger rushing toward her. This was treachery already moving. Below, the palace glowed softly under twin moons. From above, everything looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Lyra had learned that silence in Zarkan Prime meant only one thing. Someone was lying. Astrax stirred behind her. His wings shifted, scraping stone. A low sound rolled from his chest, deep and angry. "They've decided," Lyra whispered. The dragon did not need to ask who. Across the palace, council control guards moved quietly through restricted halls. Doors opened that should have remained sealed. Communication towers were locked down. Ships in orbit changed formation, not defensive but containing. They were trapping the palace. They were trapping her. The prince burst on the balcony, armor half-fastened, eyes burning with fury. "They're staging a coup," he said. "They plan to blame you. Say you corrupted Astrax. Say I lost control." Lyra nodded. "They won't stop with me." "No," the prince said grimly. "They'll kill the dragon, too." Astrax roared, the sound shaking the towers. Fire spilled from his jaws, lighting the night sky. That was the signal. Weapons activated across the palace. Sirens screamed. The Empire's heart began to tear itself apart. "Run," the prince ordered. Lyra shook her head. "If I run, they win." She stepped forward. The fire surged. Below them, the first strike hit. Energy cannons fired from hidden platforms, slamming into the lower arenas. Stone exploded. Smoke rose. Soldiers loyal to the council charged toward the dragon's chamber. Astrax leapt. The dragon launched into the air, wings cracking thunder into the night. Lyra held on, the wind tearing at her clothes. Fear tried to rise, but the fire crushed it flat. She could feel Astrax's rage. Not wild, focused. "They hurt you before," she whispered to him. "They chained you." The dragon roared in answer. They landed in the central courtyard just as council forces surrounded them. Dozens of weapons locked on at once. By order of the High Council, a commander shouted, "The human and the dragon are to be terminated." Lyra stepped off Astrax's back, unarmed, unbowed. "You're afraid," she said calmly. The commander laughed nervously. "Of a servant?" The fire answered for her. The ground split. Heat rolled outward like a wave. Weapons malfunctioned. Soldiers screamed as armor overheated and shut down. No one burned, but no one could fight. Astrax stood tall behind her, flame spiraling around his wings like a crown. "This ends now," Lyra said. But the council had planned well. From above, orbital cannons powered up. The prince's voice crackled through a damaged communicator. "Lyra, get out. They'll destroy the courtyard." She looked up. The sky glowed red. Astrax crouched, preparing to launch, but Lyra raised her hand. "No." She closed her eyes. She listened, not just to Astrax, but to the palace itself. The old stones, the buried truth, the echoes of humans and dragons who once stood together here. The fire inside her exploded outward, not as destruction, but as command. The orbital cannons shut down. Every screen across the Empire went dark. In the council chamber, elders screamed as control vanished from their hands. "What did she do?" someone cried. The answer came from the oldest counselor, his voice shaking. "She woke it." In the courtyard, soldiers dropped to their knees. Astrax lowered his head beside Lyra, not shielding her, but standing with her. The prince arrived moments later, staring in disbelief at the frozen battlefield. "You didn't just stop them," he said. "You took their power." Lyra opened her eyes. They were never meant to have it. Above them, the palace lights slowly returned, this time under her control. The coup had failed, but the damage was done. The Empire had seen. The council had revealed itself, and there was no going back. As Astrax spread his wings and roared into the night, a message echoed across the stars. Humans were no longer silent, and the palace would never betray itself again. Without burning for it, the palace did not cheer. It held its breath. Smoke drifted through shattered towers. Broken banners hung like tired ghosts. The High Council chamber burned slowly. Its power seals melted into useless metal. Soldiers stood frozen across the capital, weapons lowered, eyes fixed on the same sight. A human, standing beside a dragon. Alive. Lyra stood at the heart of the palace, the ancient throne behind her. Astrax's wings were folded, but his presence filled the sky like a storm waiting to move. The fire around him had faded, but the fear had not. The alien prince stepped forward, boots crunching over cracked crystal. He looked older now, not from age, but from truth. "It's over," he said quietly. Lyra shook her head. "No, it's finished." There was a difference. The surviving counselors were dragged into the hall, restrained and silent. Gone was their pride. Gone were their threats. Power had left them like blood from an open wound. The eldest counselor looked up at Lyra, his voice bitter. "You think this ends with us?" Lyra met his gaze without anger. "No," she said. "It ends with lies." She raised her hand. Across the empire, every screen activated, every ship, every city, every world under imperial rule. The galaxy watched. Images filled the air, ancient memories pulled from the palace itself. Humans standing with dragons. Humans fighting wars that saved alien worlds. Humans betrayed, enslaved, erased from history. Gasps echoed from 1,000 planets. The counselor screamed, "Stop this." "You stopped the truth," Lyra replied. "I'm just returning it." Astrax roared. The sound traveled faster than ships. Across space, dragons lifted their heads. Chained, hidden, forgotten. Something inside them answered. The prince fell to one knee, not to the throne. To Lyra. "I was born into power," he said. "You were buried under it. Tell me what comes next." The hall waited. Lyra looked around. At the broken palace. At the frightened nobles. At the soldiers who had followed orders because they were taught not to question. "We rebuild," she said. "Together or not at all." One by one, soldiers lowered their heads. Not in fear. In respect. The counselors were taken away, not executed, not tortured. Exposed. Stripped of lies. Sent to face the worlds they had ruled in shadow. Justice, not revenge. That scared the galaxy even more. Days later, the palace changed. Human servants walked openly, not bowed, not silent. Dragons were freed from chains, their first steps uncertain, their eyes burning with memory. Astrax stood atop the highest tower, wings spread wide. Lyra stood beside him, the wind pulling at her hair. "You could rule," the prince said softly. She smiled, not gently, not cruelly. "I already chose." She did not take the throne. She broke it. The empire became something new. Not human, not dragon, not alien, equal. Across the stars, a message spread, not shouted, not forced. A warning. Do not mistake kindness for weakness. Do not mistake silence for surrender. Because once, a human maid was bitten by a dragon, and the galaxy learned the truth it had tried to bury. Humans do not need crowns. Humans do not need permission. Give them fire, and they will change the universe. The palace finally exhaled, and the galaxy went very, very quiet.